So we will be beginning. My name is Natalia Carfi. I'm the Deputy Director for the Open Data Charter. Thank you very, very much for joining us today in the presentation of the Open Data for Anti-Corruption Commitment Creator, a tool we have developed with a consortium of organizations, the African Network of Open Data, the Iniciativa Latinoamericana de Datos Abiertos, OD4D network, and Global Integrity. We're very happy to be able to be sharing and putting in display this tool that we have been working for over a year and a half. We will be having short presentations from organizations that have helped us develop this tool and also that have already used this tool in a testing mode. Fortunately, we've been able to showcase and test drive this tool before putting it out. So without further ado, I think we'll go into our first presentation. Please, Paula, go ahead and introduce yourself and make your presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Let's see, I hope you can all see my screen. Yes, great. So thanks, Nati, for the invitation. My name is Paula Perez. I'm a program officer with OGP in the Thematic Policy Areas team. And congratulations on the launch of the Anti-Corruption Commitment Creator. So for those who might not be very familiar with OGP, I'd like to very briefly situate the role of the platform in this conversation. OGP is a partnership of 78 countries and 76 local governments based on a unique multi-stakeholder model. At the core of OGP is a domestic dialogue between government and civil society who co-create a set of open government commitments that are locked down in 2-year action plans. The progress of each member, both in terms of the ambition of the commitments and the delivery of the commitments, but also in terms of the quality and the depth of the collaboration between government and civil society, is independently monitored by OGP's Independent Reporting Mechanism, or IRM. So the Anti-Corruption Commitment Creator being launched today was developed as part of the joint OGP World Bank Multi-Donor Trust Fund, or MDTF as we usually call it. The Advancing Thematic Priorities MDTF is funding partner organizations across different thematic policy areas, including gender, climate change, open parliament, and anti-corruption, to facilitate the implementation of OGP commitments, to promote cross-country thematic learning, and to support the uptake of very ambitious reforms in local and national action plans. So we're facing today a critical situation in which tackling corruption is a priority because millions of lives and livelihoods are at stake. According to some figures, governments have mobilized around $14 trillion in COVID-19 stimulus and safety nets. So when such large amounts of financial flows are at stake, there is a high risk of corruption. And during the pandemic, we have seen how issues like contract irregularities, missing medical supplies, bribery, and even conflicts of interest have been exacerbated. So anti-corruption has been a core policy area in OGP from its inception, being one of the most prevalent themes with the highest number of commitments in the partnership. And with the years, what we have seen is an increase in commitments in critical areas, such as open contracting and public procurement, beneficial ownership, political integrity, and extractive industries. And here's where the anti-corruption commitment creator becomes so relevant, because it's a very concrete tool that governments and civil society can leverage to raise the ambition of these commitments. And it provides very concrete guidance and ideas on where to start when planning an open data for anti-corruption commitment, as well as how to be more specific how to map and involve government agencies and other key stakeholders, what are the technical and policy questions that need to be considered when implementing open data commitments, along with tons of resources and examples from existing OGP commitments and action plans, and also guidance created by several partner organizations. So certainly a very helpful tool in this context. If we zoom in a little bit and look at areas where governments are using open government approaches to tackle corruption, open contracting is certainly a key one. Several countries have adopted the open contracting data standard as part of their OGP action plans, such as Paraguay, for example, allowing for increased citizen access to public contracts. Ukraine is another example where an online portal was established for e-procurement, which proved very helpful during the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there is a wealth of relevant experience and learning within the partnership to draw on in public procurement transparency and accountability. But going forward, there's still a lot to be done in terms of raising the ambition of these commitments. For example, by going beyond publishing data to the data use and involving affected communities and civil society in monitoring public contracting, but also looking at sector-specific applications such as health or climate or what we call green procurement. Nearly 30 OGP countries have made commitments in beneficial ownership transparency, which is an essential tool to combat corruption, illicit financial flows, and also to fight tax evasion. These commitments range from registers in the extractive sectors to central public registers, implementing FATF standards, EITI standards, or EU Anti-Money Laundering Directive number 5. The United Kingdom became the first country in OGP to establish a beneficial ownership registry following their OGP commitment in 2013. And several countries have made similar commitments since then, including Nigeria, Armenia, Mexico, and Norway. And the Beneficial Ownership Leadership Group was established to promote leadership in this area, aiming to set the bar high on publishing beneficial ownership in open data. So going forward, if the various corruption leaks, like the Panama Papers and the most recent FinCEN files have shown something, is both that having information in open data format is critical, but also that cooperation between countries to share this information must be improved, and that civil society and the independent media play a fundamental role in using this data and reporting these cases. So let me finish by saying that this year presents a great opportunity to scale up ambitious anti-corruption reforms, since over 100 action plans at the national and local level are being co-created. As current OGP co-chairs, the government of South Korea and Maria Barón launched a call to action to all OGP members to make progress on issues like anti-corruption by co-creating ambitious commitments, and also to engage government, parliament, civil society, independent state institutions, and the private sector to identify, diagnose, and design effective anti-corruption solutions. So in this context, I think the Anti-Corruption Commitment Creator is a tool that can support the efforts of government and civil society to open up data to fight corruption through more ambitious commitments that will ultimately lead to strong implementation results in opening up government. So I'm going to stop here and very happy to answer any questions that might come up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. And I'll let everybody know that if you have any questions, please go to the chat room and leave them there. We will be taking questions from the chat room. So thanks, Paula, for that intro and giving us the context of the project and where we are working on. Now I'll leave the floor to Alert Hudson, from Global Integrity. let me, Alan, just share my screen, and please do unmute yourself.
Cool. Thanks, Natty, and thanks, Paula, for setting out the background and providing a bit of information about OGP and the things that have taken place in OGP in terms of trying to use data to address corruption over the past several years. Nice to see everybody. I see a number of people who I know and a number of people who I don't know. I'm looking forward to the discussion. So just very briefly about me. So I'm Alan, the Executive Director of Global Integrity. I've been in that role for 6 years. Global Integrity, for those of you who don't know, we're a non-profit organisation based at the Open Gov Hub in Washington, DC. Around the corner, at least when co-working spaces are used, around the corner from from many of the people in the Open Government Partnership Support Unit, although Global Integrity, as with OGP, has members of staff in different parts of the world. And I am currently in England, in Brighton, having moved back to England last summer. So Global Integrity, we do a lot of work supporting government and civil society partners around the world as they try to address complex problems relating to corruption, the use of resources, and the delivery of public services. We do that by trying to support cycles of collaborative learning and action around the problems that our partners are trying to address. We've also been a strong partner of the Open Government Partnership throughout the years that my predecessor, Nathaniel Heller, was on the steering committee of OGP and was involved in the early stages. And we have done a number of things with OGP over the past, I guess, 10 years now. So my role today is to just say a little bit more about how we got here, the kind of backstory to developing this OD4AC commitment creator. I should say that it's not me at Global Integrity who has led this work. It has been my colleague Jorge Flores. Jorge is hopefully fast asleep in Bogota, although I know that some of my colleagues on the east coast of the US are not fast asleep. But Jorge led this work for us. He's in Bogota. I have been drafted in as the person who is in the right time zone to talk about to contribute to this webinar. So Jorge has led it on our side, and it's very much been a team effort with the Open Data Charter, the Latin American Open Data Initiative, the Africa Open Data Network, and OD4D. So the backstory to the creation of this tool is pretty simple, really. It's a story of excitement, disappointment, frustration, curiosity, and determination. So if you move on to slide four, Natty, please. So yeah, excitement, disappointment, frustration, curiosity, and determination. I think for many of us over the past decade or more, there's been initially a lot of excitement and enthusiasm for the potential of transparency and transparency commitments within OGP to make real changes and to strengthen the fight against corruption. Sometimes there's been disappointment and frustration where those high hopes for transparency and openness have not really been fulfilled, and so some disappointment and frustration, but then I think also some determination and curiosity to find ways in which transparency and openness more broadly can make a difference. So that is the backstory to this project, and that is what we've been trying to do. So that means that the project has in some ways been about two things. Firstly, trying to understand why it is sometimes, in fact often, why it has often been hard for people for country level reformers who are trying to harness the power of open data to fight corruption, why it's sometimes been hard for them to do that, and then having understood that, having enhanced our understanding of those challenges, then trying to come up with some approaches, including a tool to help to make that easier. So slide four. The first step in the process was about trying to understand the challenges of using data to fight corruption, using the OGP platform. Onto slide 5. So to do this, we set out 4 learning questions that we focused our efforts on. And so in the early stages of the project, when we were talking to various people and reviewing the data, we were trying to understand, we were trying to get answers to these 4 questions. So questions about what are the main challenges faced by country level champions, what strategies do they use to try and overcome those challenges, do the challenges and strategies differ by issue? So is there a different situation in relation to open contracting or beneficial ownership or extracted revenues? So what are the differences between the kind of sub themes? And then how do external actors provide support? What has worked, what hasn't, and why? So those were some of the questions that we focused on to enhance our understanding of the challenges. We also looked on, on slide 6, to do that, we drew on the experience of the 4 partner organisations in this area. We also drew on the Irm data, which Paola mentioned. We did a number of interviews with country level champions and experts in the sphere of open data for anti-corruption. We held workshops in Latin America and Africa, and we had some more focused country level engagement and support in Colombia, Kenya, Ghana and Chile. Slide 7, an important part was looking at the IRM data. I'll just go through this briefly. So 2 slides on the IRM data. The IRM data shows that over the years, there have been 200 commitments that have been about open data and anti-corruption, 218 commitments. Of those, only 21, so 10% of those have been starred by the IRM, which means that they are assessed as commitments that have the potential to go beyond the business as usual approach to things. Of those 21 commitments, most were focused on budget transparency, with a smaller number focused on public procurement, and then a couple each on aid and extractives. Those numbers don't add up because, rather creatively, some of the commitments were focused on a couple of areas, so brought together things on aid and budgets or aid and extractives. The other thing that the data shows us is that is around the kind of effectiveness of the commitments that were made within the Open Government Partnership to use open data to fight corruption. The top line shows that 50%, I'm not sure whether to say only 50% or not. I mean, actually 50% doesn't seem that bad to me. 50% of commitments reviewed by the IRM were completed or substantially completed. However, 60% of those commitments were seen as having medium or low specificity, so basically being a bit vague, and less than 40% were seen as having even a moderate effect on opening government. So that's the top line of data there. The second line shows, in some ways, it shows a path from transparency through participation to accountability, and shows that while a number of the commitments, many of the commitments, 98% of those of the commitments reviewed by the IRM were seen to have an impact in terms of generating transparency. Only 30% of the commitments led on to some change in participation, and only 14% led to some change in public accountability. It would be interesting to go a step further along the results chain and see what percentage had an impact on actual levels of corruption or the lives of people in the countries concerned. I fear the numbers would be even lower. Moving on to slide 9. So some of the reasons why reformers have found it difficult to craft effective open data for anti-corruption commitments relate to a number of things. These can be found, they're written up in a blog post by Fabrizio Squalini from the Latin America Open Data Initiative. Maybe Natty will be able to put that in the chat so people can follow up on that, or I will in a few minutes. And so some of the challenges we surfaced in our conversations in our research was that champions sometimes found the commitments were sometimes insufficiently focused on concrete problems. They were a bit general. They were kind of around making data available, but with not enough clarity about why or who might use the data or what particular challenge it might address. Secondly, it was sometimes difficult to bring the data stewards and managers of data to the table, even though they have a very important role to play. There's the regular challenge that some players in the system may not have the incentives and the political incentives to open data and to open data in ways that makes it usable and useful. Sometimes it was difficult to create strategies for opening up data and promoting its use, and strategies which took account of issues around privacy, for instance. Sometimes the processes were too rushed, and there was insufficient time and space for collaboration in the co-creation processes. Moving on to slide 10, please. Other related challenges were that sometimes it was the scope of the commitment and the way in which the commitment would link to other ongoing reform efforts in the country was not clear. There were sometimes challenges in working out whether and how to build on existing tools, and also challenges around taking account of the technical capabilities as regards the design and implementation of commitments. So moving on to the second shorter bit is then armed with this understanding of the challenges that people have faced in using open data to address anti-corruption and in designing and implementing effective OGP commitments to that end. So how might those challenges be addressed? So the challenges we thought might be addressed in three ways. This is slide 12. Firstly, developing tools. Secondly, sharing lessons and insights. And thirdly, supporting country-level champions in using those tools. So the first of those, slide 13, is what we've done. What I should say, what my colleagues and the other organisations have done in relation to the OD4AC commitment creator. So this is a tool that is intended to support the design and implementation of more effective commitments to address corruption using open data. And we'll hear more about this briefly. So, but this is the kind of this is the focus of what we've done in this project. Second area, which has also been part of the project and continues to be, is sharing lessons and insights. So facilitating conversations between champions in different countries and in different parts of the world who have tried to use open data to address anti-corruption, so that they can share about the challenges they've faced and the approaches they've taken to addressing those challenges. And last but not least, and this is something that we're hoping that the tool will enable and will enable more of, is supporting country level champions. So basically helping to build and strengthen a community of champions across different countries and different regions who are trying to design OGP commitments to use open data to fight corruption, perhaps including in particular sectors, as Paola mentioned, so that they can share experience, learn from each other, progressively sharpen up their efforts and celebrate their successes. So that is some of the backstory to the tool and the process, and next presenter will share some more about the tool itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan, for that. And I will be taking the lead now, explaining and showing off the tool a little bit. So let me just share my screen once again to be able to do that. This is the difficult part of online presentations, that I have to. Okay. Here we go. So as I told everybody, I'm Natalia Carfi. I'm the Deputy Director of the Open Data Charter, and I'm going to share specifically what the tool looks like and what we aimed by creating this tool. So the objective is for government and civil society representatives drafting a commitment on open data to fight corruption, being able to do so while working on all the challenges that Alan talked about. The audience of the tool, it's everybody who is involved in the co-creation process, an OGP co-creation process. So governmental agencies that are part of that co-creation process with open data for anti-corruption commitments, civil society organizations, both the ones that are in the multi-stakeholder forum and those that are thematically connected to open data or anti-corruption that are part of the co-creation process. And of course, the open data community itself, because the tool goes deep into questions on open data and anti-corruption. I wanted to share a little bit more about the consortium that created this tool, and that it's still working together on this project. So the Open Data Charter is kind of the general coordinator. Global Integrity is our partner in the development of the learning and evaluation plan, but also very hands-on on the creation of these tools. As I said, we have two organizations that are working regionally. So ILDA, which is the Latin American Open Data Initiative, and the African Open Data Network, who are our partners in both regions. Then the OGP support unit, who has been helping a lot with connecting with governments, with civil society organizations in both regions. The World Bank, who is also part of the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, of the Multi-Donor Trust Fund group, and then RDRC, which promotes the Open Data for Development network. So those are everybody that were involved and are still involved in this project. And together we developed this tool out of the process of implementing this project. So this is what you would see in one of the first pages of the tool. It's a very hands-on tool. So we made it so that you could go step by step, asking questions and developing notes in order to create these tools. So the first step goes into what is the policy goal that the commitment is trying to address. So understanding the overall situation of this commitment being created, and just pointed out that because we saw so many commitments where the objective was not that clear. That's why we began with the broader question, and then you'll see we'll go into the deep discussion of what the commitment should look like. Step 2 is actually understanding what is the corruption problem that the commitment will address. So we will dig deeper into the question of the objective, the clear objective of the commitment. Then the step 3 will go more into the technical bits of the possibility of implementing that commitment. So what are the technical capacities of open data in the country or in the subnational government where this commitment is being created, and what is the anti-corruption institutionality also that it's going on in that country or subnational government, to understand who the key players that should be in place in order to create this commitment, in order for it to be implementable should be, and then understanding what the overall impact of this commitment will be. So let's go a little bit deeper into the tool. So the step 1, as you see, and it's trying to understand why this commitment is important and why should it be included also in this round of co-creation processes. So maybe the idea is there, but you are like the situation, the institutional situation, the legal situation, it's still not there in order to have an implementable open data for anti-corruption commitment. So you'll see that the tool, and I'm going to show you, the tool, it's made out of resources and questions that the multi-stakeholder forum or the roundtable of civil society organizations and governmental institutions should look on. So you'll see this is part of one of the pages of the tool, and I will be showing you a lot of those. So we are handling this tool with a series of questions in order to be answered, and then resources that could help you address those questions if you don't already know an answer. So you'll see these toolboxes everywhere in the tool. Then the step 2, as we said, the idea is to understand the anti-corruption problem in order to be able to address it specifically in the commitment, because we saw, as Alan and Paula talked about, a lot of commitments where the description of the problem wasn't right on point. So here you see we have a series of questions to understand the problem, and then more resources in order to be able to answer those questions. The tool, you will be able to print it out and take notes there. So we played around with the design a lot, and we actually held workshops on kind of UX of the tool, so to make it as usable as possible. So you will be able to try to draft the answers to those questions in the tool if you were to print it. And if not, just taking notes, of course, aside from it. But as you'll see, there's a lot of resources also, not to leave you alone with these questions and not having the resources to answer those questions. Step 3 is how open data can actually help with the anti-corruption problem that you want to tackle. We understand that open data, it's a means to an end, not an end in itself. So the idea is to understand what the open data community, what the open data policy can bring into the anti-corruption commitment. So understand the expected results, the impact that we want to have with this connection of open data to fight corruption. You'll see once again as a series of questions with, for example, as here, some examples of possible answers to those questions. So once again, you see, for example, in this page, the resources that we propose that you check on in order to answer these questions, and then examples of possible answers for you to take to have an idea of what the aim of the question is. What we propose is that you go question by question, trying to answer as many as you can, and not go around the steps just back and forth. Just go in with the flow that we created, because it will help you go from the broader questions into the more specific ones in order to be able to create this open data for anti-corruption commitment, and making sure that you will be able to implement it in the period that the National Action Plan, the Open Government National Action Plan, will entail. We've, as I said, we've tried to work with design to make it as usable as possible. So we've created little spaces on where to take notes, and also kind of graphic designs in order for it to be a hands-on tool. So you'll see these types of illustrative ideas everywhere in the tool, in each of the steps, and hopefully will help make the navigation of the tool smoother and clearer. And we want people to take notes everywhere, but we also left little spaces for you to be able to answer these questions. For example, this is the consider smart methodology, which is the methodology that OGP proposes in order to draft commitments. Of course, it's very important to have a mapping of the key actors, as I said. And so here we see a proposal, a graphic proposal on key actors to understand if you have everybody who will be needed for the implementation of the commitment in the room, and you'll be able to mark up who's who in the country or in the subnational government that you're working on. So as you see, we've tried to be as creative as we could with the tool in order to be as useful and as navigable, if that word even exists, as possible, to help out both government and civil society organizations get into these discussions while addressing the questions that are part of the tool. You'll see it's really connected. All the questions are connected one to the other. The fourth step, which is very, very important, is the idea of understanding what the overall impact of the commitment is, and how it will contribute to solve the problem and change practices. So once again, here we have questions and areas of taking notes in order to be able to help these conversations, these multi-stakeholder forums actually address these problems in a kind of playful way, but always leaving in some examples of what an output in this case, what an output, what an outcome, and what an impact should look like, and also examples on already existing commitments that were right on point on how to describe this for example, in this case, the output, the outcomes, and the impacts. Once again, the questions and all the resources that we could gather in this tool. And then you'll see by the end of the tool, some additional information would be kind of an annex, sorry. So you'll see a lot of links and national action plans that actually have commitments on this, that have been very good, very well drafted, and very and implemented throughout the process of the National Action Plan implementation. So there's a lot of information gathered in the tool. The idea was to be able to provide a one-stop shop that gather all the information that you could actually use to create this commitment. So then this is our proposal on how to use the tool as a booklet. As I said, print it and write notes as you move forward with the questions. We propose that you go through the whole section step by step, answering each of the questions without moving further, and just go really question by question, and talking and collaborating with all the other participants in the room, or the virtual room that is part of the co-creation process. Visit the linked resources as references or as inspiration. As I said, we gathered a lot of resources that would be helpful in these processes. So if you have any questions or if you have any doubts, there will be a resource that will be helping you out through this process. Use the examples to illustrate the different views. We've gathered a lot of examples, but of course, discussion is always good to have in these processes. And then try to figure out if from one of the steps, all the questions make sense to you, or understanding which are the most relevant ones to the process that you're going through. So from now on, the resources will be, the tools will be uploaded to our webpage. I'm sorry, my cat has decided to join the session and download the resources. The resource will be in English and in Spanish. We're doing one of these webinars later on in a more friendly time zone for Latin America. So you will be able to download both the Spanish and the English one from the Open Data Charter, from the Open Data Charter's webpage, but also from all our colleagues' web pages. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. And so I will leave now the floor to Charlene Mingwe. She works in the Data Gateway, and her organization has been able to test drive the tool while co-creating, while using it in a co-creation processes. So I wanted to, we are very glad to have her on board in order to tell us her experience with the tool. So Charlene, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. As stated, my name is Charlene Migwe, and I shall try my best to give an example of how we've used this, particularly from the Kenyan context. My focus areas, so I would be speaking from experience from 3 action plans that we have supported. So one is, of course, the Kenya OGP National Action Plan, for open contracting commitment, the Nairobi County Open Contracting Commitment, and Makueni County Open Contracting Commitment. So the last 2 are subnational governments. So I think that gives us a bit of a range to work with and get key learnings from that. Same thing, we mainly focus on open contracting work in terms of OGP. So my learnings will be geared towards using the tool, particularly for open contracting commitments. I'll start with an overview of, I think, the most useful perspective that I would say we got from the tool is in 2 points. So first, understanding the root of the problem. With open contracting, sometimes you can be stuck in just thinking that I just want to publish, I just want to put it out there because people want to know more about the corruption problems in procurement, but there needs to be more work in understanding what the root of the problem is and what the government is even trying to achieve in itself. And secondly, having context in mind. With contracting, there are a lot of things that come to mind. So think about the data ecosystem. Are we trying to improve that? If we were trying to improve that, what would be the best way to improve the current data ecosystem with a partner government? Data governance frameworks, and also increasing the use of data by stakeholders, because with contracting and being held accountable for anti-corruption comes with a lot of participation from all the relevant stakeholders. So more of a collaborative approach. So that's a summary of the most useful perspectives we got from the tool. But if I go, I'll break it down from what we mainly got from the tool as we engaged all these government entities and then the different stakeholders involved in the multi-stakeholder forums. And the first one that was discussed was understanding what the policy goal that this commitment will address. The 3 key discussion points that kept coming up during these discussions with all the stakeholders. One, more transparency, participation, and accountability. And for that, what mainly came up was the need to improve data quality and improving data standards as a basis to start with, so that you can be able to share that data. Number 2, participation came in very strongly, because the idea was once the data quality is good, then finding ways for and improving channels for citizen participation and building capacity of groups to use the data. So it was good to see the stakeholders moving away from an assumption that we'll just publish the data and that's sufficient, and guys will just come in and use the data. More focus on participation and engagement to ensure they use and sufficient channels for citizen participation. And of course, who are the users? Thinking about private sector. So for example, one of the counties, Nairobi, is engaging the Kenya Private Sector Alliance in co-creation to make sure that participation is achievable. So, and thirdly, accountability. Well, strengthening oversight, internal oversight came in quite a lot in terms of building buy-in and commitment within the county government for them to be able to be held accountable and to also respond to such challenges and accountability claims from all stakeholders. I'll go to the step 2, which is what is a corruption problem that the commitment will address. Some of the key gaps and what really helped, this step helped unearth was issues such as combating enrichment of public officials. So one that came up strongly from one of our counties is publishing requisitions and improving product descriptions. This never really came up in any open contracting work that I've done. And they wanted to just make sure that, and they say this is one of the biggest gaps that they have in terms of fighting corruption, in that in the purchase requisitions, people are being too specific with product descriptions to only allow some specific private sector entities to be able to bid for projects, or the product descriptions are just flawed. So just giving you how specific we were able to get to through probing these questions and going through this. Something more specific that came up was improving ACPO. And here the challenge was women, youth, and PWDs were not able to access tender opportunities. What needed to be done to be able to support these groups to access opportunities? Is it a corruption issue, or is it a lack of data information, or lack of access to even access these opportunities such as tenders, and even easier ways to apply for such things? And of course, whistleblowing was a corruption problem in terms of people are not being able to feel safe enough to give their feedback and to flag particular areas of corruption. The third step is how to ground open data for anti-corruption purposes. And here we focused more on the SMART idea of being more specific, having more measurable, achievable, and relevant milestones. Something that's particularly relevant to Kenya right now. I think about more of a time-based milestones that we're struggling with to do right now with the 2 counties that are just coming up, Nairobi and Makueni, is think about election timelines. So you're finding that some of these subnational governments want to start sooner and fast track some of the initiatives and milestones so that they could achieve them before next year when election begins. That's of course finding the right balance of making sure we effectively achieve those milestones, but we're also cognizant of the timeline that we have. More of achievable, back to the achievable, where, for example, give an example of the stakeholders who, for open contracting, we're rolling out in a county that's just beginning, and we have maybe 1 year to roll out. Thinking about the most effective way to roll out, for example, a system. They want an open contracting portal that Development Gateway can build for them. How can we achieve that within that 1 year? And having discussions with all the stakeholders of if we can do a pilot approach and roll it out slowly across the department. So just thinking about more achievable milestones. And lastly, there were other, I think, interesting ones that came up that were also relevant and achievable, and thinking about integration to national level systems such as PPRA and our procurement portal, national procurement portal. And why this didn't come up at first, but this came up later on from even lessons learned from other counties, because it really reduces the duplication of efforts if counties having their own publishing of data and national government systems doing that. And even for giving an example of Makueni, that was a subnational government that had already implemented a portal before they were able to come up with their OGP milestones. But now that they are getting into OGP local, they've taken a step back and looked at their lessons learned and thought, what is it we can achieve best with our priority being able to publish data and improving the participation of all the other stakeholders in holding us accountable, and improving the feedback loops between the complaint mechanisms to us, improving our services to them. So they are focusing on implementation data, meaning past contract, what happens after contract, improving how implementation data is done. For example, they have something called the project management committees that give them feedback on the quality of implementation on the ground. So the project management committees are made up of community members, CSOs, etc., for every different location within that county. So their focus is how do we strengthen that section, such as PMCs or M&E reports, or our publishing of our payment vouchers, and loop in all these other stakeholders to be able to improve our implementation monitoring and improve the quality of their rollout of contracts. So the last one, which is the step 4, which is how will the commitment contribute to address a corruption problem? A lot of the counties are trying to look at the participation evidence from Makueni County, which I told you had already started open contracting work, and trying to adopt some of the county's participation strategies. I know one of the tools helped us focus on thinking about where has this worked before, and what can we borrow from that instead of reinventing the wheel. And some counties are borrowing from that. Then thinking about commitment of data published goes back to our timelines, and defining the achievable scope that will be able to address the corruption problem. So it would be very tempting if we look at what Makueni County had already done, which had a very wide scope. So it was procurement planning all the way to contracting and other many different documents. So taking a step back and thinking about what scope of data will they be able to publish to achieve what they to address the corruption problem that we had already discussed in step 1, with the time that we have and the resources that are currently available to all the stakeholders. Then there's a sustainability issue that came in play across all the discussions that we had. And we had seen cross-cutting issues such as capacity building, but more focus on more targeted capacity building, even internally of all the procurement officers, the chief officers, the ministers, to be able to hold them accountable. There's open contracting policies that are being put in place that I know Makueni has run, and other counties are wanting to include into their action plans. And of course, multi-stakeholder engagement that has also supported the sustainability issues. For gauging impact and understanding how the commitment has helped address the corruption problem, we've only seen Makueni County look at the AGPO numbers, that's the women, youth, and people with disabilities numbers. So there's some analytics that they have where they're able to see how many more women, youth, and people with disabilities are able to access more tenders after we started our open contracting work. But one of the milestones, and this is also some support we're also giving Makueni in partnership with OCP, is to come up with monitoring and evaluation tools where they are now trying to see, okay, we've been in this for 2 years. How are we able to now move on and see if we actually are achieving our commitments, and if we are actually able to gauge this and see how we can improve over time. So I think that's me from a nutshell. I'll hand it over.
Thank you very much, Charlene, and the work that you've been doing. It's been amazing, and thanks for helping out, also testing out the tool. So we're very glad to have you here. And in the remaining minutes, I will share with you the next steps on this project. So the idea is to launch. So after this workshop, we will be uploading the tool, as I said, both in English and Spanish. But the next step is the tool is being translated into French for our Francophone, for all the Francophone members of OGP. So civil society organizations and member countries that are part of OGP will be able to also use this tool. And then the consortium is actually creating a second tool, which will be a tool that will help. Charlene, just to let you know, you're showing still your screen, so we're seeing everything. That's good. And so we are actually creating knowledge tool number 2, which will be a platform that will help you navigate the questions of the beginning of this process. So should your country, should your government, your subnational government be creating this commitment right now? So the idea is a platform that will allow you to navigate certain questions and answering yes or no moving forward with the process of understanding where you stand in the open data for anti-corruption pathway. So be aware that in a couple of months we will be launching that. I wanna say thanks to everybody who helped organize this webinar, all the GI members that actually helped us with all the comms and the platforms, and will be helping out with the Spanish one in a couple of hours. Thanks everybody who connected, and for our wonderful speakers. Thanks Paula, thanks Charlene. Thank you Alan for joining also this presentation, and thanks everybody who's been connected here. Please let us know if you have any further questions. All the organizations of the consortium are open to questions, to helping out understanding better the tool, helping out implementing the tool. We want this tool to be as full as possible, so just reach out. We're just a tweet or an email away. Thanks everybody. I think we can wrap up a few minutes early.